Now, if you've been watching the Disney Gallery Star Wars The Mandalorian series that's been running on Disney Plus, and if you haven't been, it's basically a behind-the-scenes look at the show's creation. Anyway, one thing has long since become abundantly clear, as if it didn't become clear just watching The Mandalorian itself, which is that this is certainly not your average television series. From the approach taken by the creators and directors, to the new technology being used, to the implementation of improved old technology or practical effects, this is definitely a next level show. And no, it's certainly not the first series to go far above and beyond the norm. Off the top of my head, Game of Thrones might very well be the first show that really sort of wowed me when it came to overall production quality for something that was, shall we say, a non-theatrical production, though there's certainly many others than just these two examples, nor will these be the last of it. If anything, this is just the beginning. Amazon is even in the process of making a Lord of the Rings series for their streaming platform called Amazon Prime, that, when all is said and done, will likely cost them over $1 billion. They spent $250 million alone just to get the rights to it. And in that deal, they're obligated to make at least 5 seasons, so as a huge fan of Lord of the Rings, my fingers are crossed right now that they don't screw this up. And so, just like how the original Star Wars movie back in 1977 and Jaws back in 1975 are said to be the movies that kicked off the age of the blockbuster, they're thought of as movies that radically changed the industry forever, are shows like The Mandalorian, Game of Thrones, and quite possibly this new Lord of the Rings series from Amazon going to be looked at decades down the road as some of the shows that maybe started to kill not necessarily the film industry, but the theater industry. Will going to the movies become a thing of the past? Well, I think one of the big keys here is how radically things have changed on the home front. Once upon a time, the only way to get a big screen experience was to go to the movies. Televisions like this one on your screen now, which had a 13-inch screen, were pretty standard in most homes when Star Wars first came out, and there really weren't options for much better than this. And until the early 2000s, tube TVs or CRTs remained the norm. Either that or large, generally blurry projection screens were also an option. And even when plasma and LCD screens started to hit the scene, they were very expensive for, at best, a marginally larger, albeit wide screen, and maybe slightly better picture quality. And so the amount of money being poured into these new shows like The Mandalorian to make them true spectacles would be almost a moot point if people didn't have the TVs and sound systems at home to truly appreciate them. And while nowadays a few $100 can get you a pretty decent large screen 4K TV and maybe a sound bar to boot, heck, for less than $1,000 these days, you can get yourself a good name brand 75-inch 4K television. Spend a few $1,000, the price of a 37-inch plasma TV roughly 20 years ago, and you can get a top-of-the-line huge screen TV and a fantastic sound system that will make you question the need to ever go to a movie theater again. Not to mention, you don't have to go anywhere. You can watch from the comfort of your own sofa, recliner, or whatever else it is you like to relax in while watching television. You can also pause whenever you like or need to, and snacks won't cost you an arm and a leg. Nor do you have to worry about being seated next to somebody that likes to talk the whole time or pull out their phone every 2 minutes, unless it's your own family and friends that do that. Then there's also the fact that 1 month of a streaming service is usually less than the cost of a single movie ticket, and so if you have a family, and a sizable one at that, one trip to the movies, with snacks included, could cost you in the ballpark of $100, whereas you could spend $10 a month for, well, potentially a month's worth of entertainment for the whole family, not just a couple hours. And the money you save from going to the movies even just once a month for a whole year could get you that nice TV you've been eyeing. And before I start sounding too much like an ad for streaming services or big screen TV makers, or that I'm against movie theaters, which I'm not, I love going to the movies, the simple obvious truth is we've come a long way since 1977 when Star Wars first came out. Heck, we've come a long way in home entertainment in just the past decade or so. The way people consume entertainment now, and even what they expect from it, has radically changed over time, and will continue to do so. I mean, there's even a strange flip side to all this talk about big screen TVs and home entertainment systems, which is a lot of people these days, mainly the younger crowd I'd say, have no problem whatsoever watching something on their phones or other similar small screens. I've even encountered at least a couple people that prefer to watch something on their phones over a big screen, which makes no sense to me because I do enjoy the big screen, big sound experience. And again, not all that long ago, the only way to really get that was to go to a movie theater. But that is not the case anymore. For not a lot of money, you can get a close approximation at home. And so just taking all this into account, it would already come as no surprise to learn that AMC, the largest theater chain in the US, has substantial doubts that it can stay in business, once they're even allowed to fully reopen, that is, because quite obviously there has been another big issue facing movie theaters these past few months, one that's forced them to close and remain closed since around March. And it will persist to some degree even after they're allowed to reopen. And I don't think I need to even say what this is because, well, YouTube doesn't really like people talking about it. But speaking of all this, another big factor here will be how keen the entertainment companies and studios are to finally release some of these movies that have been delayed, with Black Widow and Wonder Woman 1984 being two such examples. It won't do theaters any good to reopen if they don't have anything new to show in order to lure in customers, which may already be hard to do, since many will likely be leery even if the theaters are only operating at half capacity, which is another problem the theaters will have to face, only having half the available seats, which is also another reason for the movie companies to not want to release these movies to half the normal audience. And so one option some companies took during all this, with some of their movies at least, was to forego the theatrical release altogether and to send them straight to digital. Now, none of the really big movies decided to do this. They were all delayed for a later theatrical release. And though I'm no expert when it comes to the financial side of things here, after doing some research, it seems that on average, and it varies depending on the movie, the studio, how long it's been out, and so on, but on average, a theater's cut of ticket sales is generally around 45%. Which means if a movie grosses $100 million at the box office, the theater takes about $45 million, and then when you take away the cost to make the movie and to advertise it, well, whatever's left is profit for the studio. So again, being no expert here, I wonder if skipping the middleman, the theaters, and sending it straight to a streaming platform owned or associated with the studio would make more sense, or dollars and cents in this case, for the studio. If, for example, Disney Plus puts, let's say, a new Star Wars movie up on their service, maybe one with a more modest budget than usual, and charges subscribers some sort of small premium to see it early, something like microtransactions, which are the scourge of the gaming industry, would that be profitable for them? And yes, likely some customers would be very upset that they're being asked to pay even more, but if it's only a few bucks to have access to it early, would that be something a lot of people would maybe reluctantly do? Especially since, as it stands right now, the only other option is, of course, the theater, which means this would be just an added, easier option. And of course, people without Disney Plus could also watch it upon release, but pay a much higher price when ordering it from elsewhere, from somewhere like Vudu, for example, which just might encourage people to simply order Disney Plus to get discounts on their favorite movies when they come out. And potentially here, it could still be sent to movie theaters as well for people who want to see it that way, and maybe to compromise, theaters could keep a higher cut of ticket sales. And no, I'm not trying to give the studios any ideas here. I'm sure they've long since thought of all of this and worked out the numbers to see if something like this would be more or less profitable for them. And as far as I could tell, theater chains have been fighting against this very thing, or something similar, from happening for a while now. They don't want to have to compete with simultaneous digital release. Even still, none of this covers the shift or growing love people have for a good ongoing series, perhaps over movies. The desire to sit on your couch and binge watch a new season of your favorite show that just came out on Netflix or wherever. In fact, though I love movies, a series does have some major advantages, mainly the time to slow down the story and explore its characters in far greater depth than a movie ever could. Movies generally have 2 hours to tell a story. A series could have dozens upon dozens of hours, if not much more. And though again, I do consider myself a movie lover and someone who enjoys the theater experience, so I almost hate to say this, but I think I'd rather have 10-hour-long episodes, or however many there might be, that I could watch from the comfort of my own home, over getting a 2-hour movie I had to go and see, especially when visually, the series looks as good as something like The Mandalorian did. And it, again, if you've watched the behind-the-scenes series, it's implementing brand new technology that is only going to get better and better as the years go by. Though that said, in a strange sort of way, having a more limited budget instead of movies or Star Wars movies that have, though not unlimited budgets, one that tends to be pretty massive, enough for them to pretty much do whatever they essentially want. Anyway, having a more limited yet still generous budget perhaps makes them focus a bit less on the spectacle and to only include that which they really need. And though I think Star Wars in general always has been and always should be a visual spectacle to some degree, in an odd sort of way, the original trilogy perhaps benefits from the limited technology of the day. Yes, they looked mind-blowing at the time, and they still hold up rather well today, but they were never over the top, whereas even in the prequels, I think, it became a bit more about showcasing the technology than just telling the story. And when it comes to the sequels, made in the age where you can do nearly anything visually if you have enough time and money, well, I think too much focus was placed on making things look like Star Wars, to the point where everything, all the ships, aliens, weapons, and so on, look like things that are trying to look like Star Wars, if that makes sense. They lack a bit of originality, which is something I give Lucas credit for in the prequels. Things looked new and different, looked original, but they still looked like genuine Star Wars. Anyway, I'm getting a bit off topic here, but another problem I think theaters face is I'm not sure there's any new way to really improve the experience overall. A lot of theaters now have everything from luxury heated recliners for you to sit in to full-on restaurants that will serve you during the film, and I'm not sure what else you can do or where you can go from there. As for the viewing experience itself, not since Avatar in 2009, which started a new 3D craze, has anything much changed in that department, and that was a craze until it wasn't anymore, until it turned out Avatar, the one that started it, was the best thing we'd see in 3D. Though who knows, maybe James Cameron with his Avatar sequels will change the game yet again, and have it stick this time. And so in closing here, though I don't think movie theaters are going permanently away anytime soon, barring further problems with the current world health crisis, and they're doing better than ever in foreign markets like China, which is why companies like Disney tend to bend the knee to them, the gap between the home experience and the theater experience continues to shrink, and barring some crazy leap in technology like holographic images all around you or something as you sit in the theater, I don't know that they can raise the bar all that much higher, enough to keep people to stop wondering what they're paying so much money to go to a theater for when they can have nearly an equal experience at home at far less cost. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me how you feel about this. Do you think movie theaters could end up becoming a thing of the past? In the relative near future, will we be watching everything at home or on our phones on the go? Or do theaters have a long life ahead of them yet? Is there just no way to duplicate that same experience at home that you can get at a theater? And is it worth the extra price and effort to get it? Whatever you think, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.